All right, just show up when you can, I guess.
South, I've been working on something big.
Oh yeah, what?
Yeah.
Like a new segment?
No.
Okay.
So we gotta get out of here. It's not working out.
Oh.
So I remember that marketing plan for a sponsor.
Yeah.
That was awful.
We got it.
No. I ran that by Blythe. She threw up in her mouth. She hated it.
No,
bad sign. Not a good idea.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
So we gotta get out of here, South.
Yeah. Okay. You mean like out of the building or?
No. Bigger than that.
Okay. Out of town?
No. Larger than that.
Out of state?
No. Bigger, South.
Out
Bigger.
of country?
No.
They'll arrest us. We have war crimes.
No. We can't go out of the country. We'll get arrested, like you said, and no one's going to trade for us. So
yeah, you're right.
We're doing 9 easy. All right?
Yeah.
So not out of the country, but
okay.
Have you ever heard of the multiverse? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Economy Lately. I'm Anthony Smith, Chief Economist here at FreightWaves, and I'm joined by, of course, South Turk, who's sitting behind the camera, and he's the glue that keeps this show together.
Yep. Made from dead horses.
They still do that?
I don't know. That seems like a question for Danny Gomez, I guess. Shouldn't that?
Is it not sustainable?
I would think not.
I just want to know how the horses make the glue. Anyway, but this is Economy Lately, episode 13, and we have a lot to jump into with this episode. We got some updates, and boy, were they interesting. So starting off with the first one, we have manufacturing, and this is going to be a little bit upstream, and so we'll start upstream and then work our way down. Starting off with manufacturing, we got updates for industrial production, and what we saw in industrial production was that there was a little bit of a comeback. This month, we got an increase of 0.6% after the first decline in the year last month. But the growth wasn't really widespread. The area that really saw a lot of improvements was for automotive products, which increased 6.5% on a monthly basis. This was really one of the big standouts, and this is going to be one of those areas that you can't really rely on for continued or consistent growth. This area has been a little bit choppy throughout the last few months here, and expectedly so because, of course, semiconductor shortages and things like that. There are a lot of automotive products or cars that are likely in process, let's say. Say there's a car that's almost complete. It's not quite a shell, but it has almost all of its components, and it's just needing a few chips or maybe a seatbelt or maybe some kind of small component that goes into the car door. That could stop everything, and they could have entire fleets that are just sitting there waiting. And so after some inventory comes in, they can kind of push some of that inventory out, and then we see some increases in manufacturing and industrial production. So that's going to be one of those areas to watch closely, and definitely an area that had some increases this month. When we look at overall manufacturing, there's still some downward movement and some easing when we look at things like the ISM PMI and the new orders component that we covered last month, because we are still seeing that there's contraction in the new orders component, and those backlog of orders are still coming down substantially.
Now, when you say industrial production, you mean like Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails, right? Like industrial rock music? He produces them?
9 Inch Nails?
Yeah.
Sounds painful.
Well, I mean, it was big in the 90s.
Why did they have 9 Inch Nails in the 90s?
Anthony.
The next segment that we have to talk about is going to be housing and construction. When we look at housing starts, it got rough, down 9.6% for the month. And we also saw that permits dropped 1.3% for the month. These two indicators are really showing that there's some, let's just say, significant easing happening in the housing market. Now, of course, when we look at new home sales, that's only a smaller portion of the overall home transaction market. A much bigger one is going to be existing home sales. And we're seeing some declines in that of over 5%. And we also saw that inventories are starting to really open up for existing homes. Overall, there is definitely some weakness happening in housing and construction. Remember when a few episodes ago, we were talking about housing and that there is some opportunities for a lot of people that have not quite entered that contract phase to start dropping off and canceling. This is likely going to continue to happen and start ramping up as we continue to move throughout the remainder of 2022. The other big thing that we have to talk about is the home builder sentiment, which is really starting to come down quite substantially. The other big thing that's coming down is the home purchasing sentiment index. And this is going to be more of an index around demand for homes from the consumer side. And we're seeing that at lows that haven't been seen in a decade. Overall, we're looking at the FOTRI. We're back at it.
You surprised me. I didn't see it coming.
No, the FOTRI.
Ah.
We're back at it.
It always gets me.
I know you love it. With the FOTRI, we're seeing that there's some substantial, I could say it.
Yeah.
Substantial easing happening there, and that's continuing to take hold. And we're seeing when we lay those two together that there's likely not going to be any kind of substantial growth for housing or any of those manufacturing outputs that's really going to provide any upward momentum for the August releases as well. So overall, housing starts definitely in a weaker position right now, and it's not looking too bright as we continue to move forward throughout 2022. And last, but definitely not least, is retail sales. This was an interesting one. We look at the recent report for July. We saw that retail sales had no change at all. There's a little bit of movements underneath in some of the subcomponents. When we look at retail sales for gas stations, this was one that declined 1.8%. Now, we covered this in the last week's episode when we talked about CPI and PPI, and that one of the downward movements was prices in energy, and that resulted in lower gas prices, and so people paying less at the pump. This is great news. We want to see people really having a step above that inflationary pressure that's really hampering them. But the other segments within retail sales were still very much pronounced. And this kind of puts things into perspective because we see that the inflationary pressures eased for retail sales of gas stations or at gas stations, and that resulted in a zero movement for retail sales. But that just kind of shows that other segments that are very much still inflated, like say grocery stores, that's really holding up retail sales from really being much worse than what it really is right now. So if we look at retail sales overall, it's not adjusted for inflation. If it wasn't adjusted for inflation, it would likely look a lot more ugly than it does right now. So I don't think this is any cause for celebration because there's still a lot more inflationary pressures across the board that consumers like yourself and me are really facing right now. Looking at retail sales, this is one that we're going to continue to watch closely, and consumer conditions are definitely going to play a factor into this. Consumer credit card definitely still up there, with utilization still through the roof, and it's not getting any easier. We'll kind of talk to some of this a little bit later with the honorable mentions and the updates for next week.
Tell me, how did the attempted murder of Salman Rushdie affect the retail sales world? Did that do anything?
I don't think we get retail sales for weaponry or anything like that.
Oh, what about, nothing about books?
No.
All right.
No.
Yeah, that's fine. All right.
Can you still buy books?
Dirty ones.
Like used or like dirty?
Like dirty, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Goodness.
In fact, yeah. Uh-huh. In fact, like Freight Alley, if you go there, early Saturday mornings between 6 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., maybe someone down there whose name rhymes with Thomas Tossin is selling them out of the bar down there. Yeah. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I thought you knew this.
A little side hustle.
Yeah, a little side. Yeah, it's not great literature, but it's literature. So
I'm sure you get the books for the literature.
Yeah, the pages are stuck together.
Goodness.
Yeah, but I think that's just from the humidity of living in Chattanooga, right?
No. And as we end this episode, we have to talk about, of course, the honorable mentions and the releases for the next week. For the honorable mentions, of course, at the time of this recording, we don't have enough jobs claims, but be sure to keep an eye out on that because those are trending higher. For the releases next week, we're going to have updates around durable goods, new orders, consumer spending, disposable income, and this is kind of going to give us updates around consumer conditions as we head throughout the third quarter. And that's going to do it for this episode.
Really? That's it?
Yeah.
I just expected so much more. I don't know why.
No, that's Bush.